and welcome to a 27th, 2020. How's everybody doing?
You lagged out.
Okay, I guess we all lagged out.
There we go. Let's go.
Hey, there's nothing like a good biddle for some problems.
And welcome to another. We got.
Well, I didn't. Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know who lagged out. I don't know if Zoom lagged out or if the stream lagged out. But either way, we are, I hope, officially open for business this week.
Hey.
Yeah. All right. So I do want to thank Dan, Joe, and Nate, and the guys that helped out last week. That was fantastic. I was so happy that Biddle went on, regardless if I was here or not. And you guys did a fantastic job of putting it together, and I appreciate it.
Happy to
The
help,
least we
Rocco.
could do for you, man.
All right. So Joshua is on the hot seat this week. He loves being on the hot seat, and not because of being on the, I don't want to say it like that. We are going to talk about Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix 2004. So if you want to talk about it, put your hand up and we will get to you. But let's start out with Dan. Dan, what'd you think of Ubuntu Cinnamon?
So I've been watching this one for a while, obviously. And I want to say, with another cycle behind the team there, I'm seeing a lot of great things happen, and I think it's got some more polish. Another cycle has really helped a lot. So nothing bad to say too much. I didn't get a lot of time in the seat with it, but what I did, everything worked. So that was really great.
All right, Joe.
I don't use Cinnamon at all.
Never?
On anything.
Never.
I mean, I have used it, but it was more like testing, just checking it out, checking out Mint, maybe. I loved it. I absolutely loved the color scheme. I maybe I like orange. Daniel came on and I just all of a sudden started looking at his shirt. The orange it's just real eye catching. The menu system looks really clean. You guys know how I feel about menu systems, but it felt really clean and nice. And I didn't run into any issues. I didn't put it through my normal weekly grind of take to work and try and work in it. I just didn't have the time this week. But from what I did play with, just solid. Like I really thought, man, this is I'm going to keep it on my laptop for a little while and try and really put some time and effort into playing with it. But yeah,
Nice.
fun. I had fun with it.
Well, I installed it on the test machine, and obviously the test machine keeps giving me issues throughout the week, and I don't know, it's got its mind of its own. Sometimes it boots up, and sometimes it just will not boot up, regardless of what I do. So I did get to install it. Went through a great install process, had no issues whatsoever, and was able to dig around in Ubuntu Cinnamon for a day or so before I couldn't get back into it. Some of these things are awesome in Cinnamon. I have always had a fond place in my heart for Cinnamon because it's always been that happy medium between KDE and GNOME as far as settings are concerned, as far as usability. Not a big fan of the menu, but I never have been a big fan of the Cinnamon menu. So when I run Cinnamon, I will install one of the other menus like Cinnamenu or CinStark 7, I think it's called, or I forget what it is. But Cinnamon gives you that, not that modern feel, but it gives you that base comfortable feel when you use it. And it's got so many cool features to it that you almost forget. When you don't run it for a while, you almost forget about all of those things that it does put in there. Now, it did recently, I guess, remove some of those settings, like where you can change the close and minimize buttons around, where you can move them around, but it still has that great usability area in the settings where, man, I can put it exactly the way I want it. So that's my take on it.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Rocco.
I
Let's
have
see. Go ahead,
Sorry.
Joshua. Jump in anytime you
Yeah, I'm
want to
sorry.
reply. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. All right, so I've been writing everything down. Smart me. So Dan and Joe, and Rocco, actually, I'm very glad that you found a lucky and good experience with UCR, because we all know, especially Dan, of how much a pain calamaris can be when people are trying to install it. Overall.
Yeah, Joshua, that installer went flawlessly, man. I didn't have no issues whatsoever.
Definitely.
It's a 50-50 chance, honestly. Unless you're smart and you know what you're doing and you got it memorized, you're fine. But overall, of course, I think that it does kind of suck that we are now again one version behind the release cycle. Congratulations to Linux Mint for their release of Olania today. But it also applies for a more stable base, and LTS releases, aka this release, is also great for that. And as you said, you can keep that Ubuntu base. And I don't know what the deal is with removing options. I don't know. I'll have to see. You can telegram me later or something. And yeah, let's move on.
All right, thanks. Larry Johnson, how are you? And I see you got your hand up, so go right ahead.
Volume issues there, dear. Great, like you said, the installer was great. Really a great release. I think I've been sick lately with some throat problems, but watching a lot of videos and no screen tearing, which is unusual on my computer that I was getting on Cinnamon or Ubuntu Cinnamon here. I never used the desk icons, but when I got into it, I started playing around with the desk icons, and I never realized that a distro had little things on a folder that tells you to use the desk icons or not, where you could actually had little lines on the side and the bottom where you could adjust the icons and also the spread. The only problem I had is that after 2 or 3 days, none of my keyboard shortcuts worked, so they stopped working. I can't get them. I even added new ones, and none of those would work. But everything ran great. Updates run great. No complaints. Top notch release. Thank you.
Thank you for that very great response and feedback. Keyboard shortcuts, I'm glad you mentioned it up. I haven't heard of it just suddenly not working. I do know that there is this issue that was patched in Cinnamon 4.6 where if you first created a keyboard shortcut, it wouldn't update until you refresh Cinnamon, where it will actually load it. It was patched, and I might try to repatch it for that version to maybe stable release update it or somehow whatever I can do. But otherwise, yeah, thanks for the review, and of course, let me know if it persists so I can see what happens.
All right, thanks, Larry. Big Pot, I see you got your hand up. Go right ahead.
Well, I didn't check out Ubuntu Cinnamon a lot, but I would like to congratulate Joshua on a job well done. And as far as I hear, you're tracking everything very well, and you're well on your way to being official flavor of Ubuntu. So congratulations.
Aw, thank you so much.
All right. Who do we got next? Dan Kelly. Let's hear your thoughts.
My thoughts. Okay.
Roll that list out, Dan. Roll that list out.
There it is. There it is.
You ready, Josh?
I was looking at YouTube chat. Okay. Are you saying that we'll need to go to the next page because I'm almost on the first one? Okay, just go ahead.
Okay. I noticed on the panel there was no shield like most Cinnamon distros have for the updates, but that's not a big thing because when there's an update available, something does pop up down there with a dot or something like that, letting you know that the system found updates. A lot of my list is going to be partially problems with Ubuntu, not necessarily your Cinnamon, because I use Cinnamon all the time. It's the only desktop I use. So I pretty well know it inside and out, and I pretty well know what underneath the Ubuntu or whatever and problems like that could be. I love the Camaro or Cameo or however you pronounce it, dark theme.
Camo.
That's really nice. I love that. I love the fact you chose to use the Nemo file manager. That's one of my favorites. I noticed, because remember several months ago, I looked at this before and gave my opinion on it. I noticed you took note to put the menu button in, and it says menu right next to it. And I kind of felt that's like a bonus for newbies coming over that are trying it so they can find their programs. They'll see this thing that says menu, they'll click on it and all their apps will be in there. So I thought that was a really nice touch to it too. The icon pack is really nice. It's not old looking, but yet it's not super modern and steamrolled looking. The icon pack is extraordinarily good. The store for the apps, I noticed that there's icons for the apps that are just missing. It's just got like a gear that's in the middle of them. That could be a Ubuntu thing. I don't know. I installed some applications. I put Clementine in and started to listen to some music. The first song I started, my primary monitor flickered really fast and then it stopped. I don't know if it just don't like Steely Dan or what, but I couldn't reduplicate it. I couldn't get it to do it again. I shut down Clementine, opened it up, and it was fine. But I thought I'd mention it in case someone else had experienced that as well, because it's never done that to me on any of the other distros I'm using that have this on it. I noticed also that you don't have the traditional panel layout, and it's probably because at the time you put it together, Mint had taken it out of their Cinnamon distro. And that's why we only have a modern panel at the bottom, and partially there's really no welcome screen, so you can flop between them or select one. Recently, Mint reinstalled their traditional panel layout because so many people cried about them taking it out at the beginning. So they put that back in. For some odd reason, I was unable to get Steam to work or install so I could use it. I played with it and played with it, and I've had this problem with all the remixes, but not with the original Ubuntu and not with the Mate. For some reason, theirs Steam works. I noticed you're using 4.4.8 Cinnamon. That's, for as far as I know, the most current version, if not maybe one back. So that's a good thing as well. Other than that, I absolutely loved it. There's really not much wrong with the Cinnamon desktop you've created. It's fully functional. I played with all the things that I normally played with. They all seem to pan out, and with a few glitches here and there. That's about it. Because
hey, Joshua.
The other items I had trouble with were
Go
just
ahead, Dan.
Ubuntu
Sorry.
items. Like Ubuntu don't like my printer. I can't get my printer to work with any of the Ubuntu distros. And I have this update thing that pops up, and it's for ununified receiver update, and it's for my keyboard. And if I click on that to update it, it kills my cordless keyboard. And I have to reach behind the machine and unplug the USB transmitter and plug it back in to get it back. Again, that's a Ubuntu thing. I've had that problem with all of them. But yes, really nice distro. I really loved it. And I was happy to try it out for you.
Hey, Joshua, can you like talk a little bit about the differences that maybe you made, or if any, that you made between, say, Linux Mint and your version of Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix?
Sure, I'll get to that in a minute, but do you mind if I just respond to Dan real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, and I have one more question when you're done.
Of course, go ahead.
I'm kind of a little new with snaps now. All the snaps that I've used in the past, I've done them through the terminal. Is there a store for the apps? I noticed I'd use the store after using the Chrome to install the Snapd and all that stuff. If I put a snap in through the terminal, I get snap. If I try one of the stores or the Synaptic Package Manager, it just gives me anything but a snap.
Okay, so the software app we use, GNOME software, does have Snap integration, but that might be Ubuntu software, only because I use GNOME DE as default, with Ubuntu's spin on it. So maybe it's that, but I'll have to look at it again. And when you're installing snaps, it's just sudo snap install.
That's what I've been
snap
using. The stores won't give you the snap install at the moment. At least the 5 apps that I downloaded and tried to use were just regular. They weren't snap.
Yeah. All right.
But,
All right. Here we go. Panel, no shield icon for update. I actually have never heard about. That's something part of our environment, and that's actually something I have no idea. It might be something part of the firewall, possibly, which I don't exactly know.
I don't know how they do that, but the Cinnamon they use for Mint's got a little shield, and they have a check mark in it when it's up to date, and then it does something else when it has updates.
That's
specifically
the Mint updater.
Yeah, wouldn't that
because it's an Ubuntu-based distro, not a Linux Mint-based distro. In order to use that, you would have to make significantly changes to the source code. So unless you're willing to go through that, using the default system updater that comes in Ubuntu is probably a better bet.
Yeah,
we're talking about updates. The updates from the store, it really it's laggy or not catching them all, because if you update from the terminal, I had a whole pile of updates that the store would not, accommodate.
Seems to be an Ubuntu issue as of late.
Yeah,
I think we've had it on multiple distros. I've even had it on Pop. I mean, it seems to.
I tried it that way because I've heard from one of the other shows someone else talking about this exact same thing.
So yeah, as Thomas said, that's probably just Mint update by itself, and that will actually lead me into the next part of what Rock was talking about comparing UCR and Mint, which I'll get to later. All right, let's see about the theme. Oh, yeah, the theme is actually although it is pretty good enough for casuals to not notice, it actually has a lot of problems. So I'm glad you like it now, at least, because I'm gonna try to make it better by trying to colorize, see what we can do with the Papyrus theme, and a lot more. If you have any suggestions, you can just message me on Telegram anytime.
Yeah,
I'll respond.
I think I installed the Roxio Cinema Max or something like that to give the buttons and stuff a blue glow around them, but I kept everything else the same, and that really made it pop with the dark theme.
Yeah. So okay. Moving on real quick. App Store, we already covered that. That would probably be upstream or in Ubuntu's GNOME software mix. Traditional default layout, I'm sure I could fix that easily. But I also do want to check out the latest version of Mint 20, which I haven't yet, and I need to pay some close in-depth detail. And once I do, I'll probably get back to you and maybe update it for 20.04.1 in August.
Okay.
No welcome screen.
I can't really do nothing with it until Ubuntu fixes all their back-end issues, so it works with my hardware and stuff.
Yeah, I understand.
But your desktop creation is really good. I like it. To me, it's it's not everything in it works.
Yep.
To my liking, and I don't ask for very much. The traditional, the modern theming for the panel, that's something that you might have picked up from downstream from the Mint guys, because they pulled out the traditional type.
I'll talk
which
about
makes,
the layout thing later, because there's actually several places where it's going and what I'm planning to do with what Mate actually uses. So I'll come back to that later, of course.
Dan, your questions real quick on snaps. You were asking that from a Mint standpoint or from Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix?
From Ubuntu period. I mean, I assumed if you're a new user, you open up the store, and the way they were talking up the snaps, you got snaps from the store.
Yeah.
I'm not getting them from the store. I'm getting apt packages.
Well, they'd have to be available as a snap. So
Right.
if your
VLC's
application
not available as a snap. Audacity's not available as a snap.
Okay. Yeah, they should be. They should be showing up.
Yeah, that's really weird. I mean, like Telegram popped up, and
yeah,
like I want to say almost all the programs, the typical Snap programs.
I can get these by just using a Snap install whatever in the terminal. That works just fine.
Yeah, that's really weird.
So
I would go ahead.
A question like on the Qt desktops, I know. So KDE Plasma or LX Qt. Did you see it in Discover? Did you notice the same issues there?
I haven't really tried it in Discover.
Okay, just curious.
So
you won't see them in Synaptic or Muon or any of those because they're just for deb packages. Go ahead, Thomas.
Synaptic was no help.
Yeah,
so
they won't be.
Synaptic is specifically for apt. You're not going to get any help for snaps from that. In the GNOME Software Center specifically, up until recently, you would get, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, multiple entries. So like searching for Audacity, for instance, you would get an Audacity entry for a snap and an Audacity entry for a deb package. In this new version, in 2004, I think you only get one entry for Audacity, for instance, and you go into that app and there should be a drop-down menu somewhere on that page. I think it's somewhere in the top in like the header bar, and you can change it. Yeah, and I think it defaults to deb package. I'm not sure. I would expect it to.
The Mint store does the same thing, except it's flat packs and apt.
It defaults to snaps actually, and it
does,
and it does still give you, it's good. Like I'm looking at it now for Audacity, it gives you, it defaults to the latest stable, which is good. But then you can also go to the beta or you can go to the edge on those options. But
so I would try looking for that little drop down menu somewhere in there. If you don't see it, then it's possible that there's a missing package, because I know in order to get that Snap integration, you have to install another package. I think it's GNOME Software Snap, something like that. It's something similar to that.
It did install when you installed Chromium. It did install about 4 or 5 items, and one of them was GNOME something. It could have been GNOME GTK something. But it got Snapd, GNOME something, and a few other components it needed rock.
Also, Dan Simmons knows exactly how to fix your problem with Steam, because he fixed ours last week with the same problem we had with.
I had no trouble with it with Mate or regular.
It's Ubuntu. A different. Maybe Dan could explain it real quick. He's better at it than I am.
Yes, so you're missing the 32-bit libraries that you need to run Steam. So you have to add basically you have to add the 32-bit architecture so that when you install Steam, it pulls them down. So there is a dpackage command that you can use to do that, to add the 32-bit libraries, and then Steam will have no issue.
You wouldn't know the name of the package offhand to get.
It's not actually a package. You have to actually just enable the 32-bit libraries, and I can send it to you in Telegram or something like that.
That would be wonderful, or even on the side note thing.
I can do it. I can do it right here in Zoom. Yep.
All right.
We had the same problem last week, but
Steam for some reason, sometimes it's just a struggle to get it to work, and other times it pops like right now.
It's definitely that issue. Go ahead,
So-
Josh.
Yeah. So all GNOME software stuff. For example, someone also mentioned in the chat, right click to uninstall. Those are all upstream things, and I wish I could control those. Sadly, I cannot. Not yet. Not until I at least get Ubuntu membership, which I'm working on. But until then, those are stuff that, of course, wishes, and well, it's always good to keep them on the wish list. So yeah, Steam. Ooh, this is a touch and go. It's literally, it should be the same for Ubuntu. If you downloaded the same file and deb package, then it should be the same. I don't think that it matters what DE you have, and I don't think it should matter about what dependencies are needed, because it should be universally fine.
No, it's something that you have to do either in the installer or in Calamares, or you have to add it after the fact, I guess, if you don't do it during the installation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Ubuntu proper and some of the other major ones, I think it's all enabled by default. So you have all those packages, and that was the difference with the remixes. So, and I would venture to say it's probably just not a known thing. I'm anticipating we'll run into it with Unity as well. Okay, Dan, glad to have you back. What a list, man. That was detailed. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and
Let's get a little from
I would have
Dave.
loved a game on it.
Yeah, well, you will, and then you'll tell us how it was.
I found what Dan posted in here, and I'm adding it to my Steam notes right now.
Great. Dave, let's get to your thoughts, Dave Jones.
First, I want to just say, Dan, if when you're talking about snaps, if you're looking for a store, if you go to snapcraft.io, they have a store on there that will just show all the snaps that you can download. And there's actually a snap store that's downloadable as a snap that you can download onto the distro and then use that instead of software just for snaps.
Okay. I was just
Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
Go ahead, Dave. Let's get your thoughts on
as
it,
for Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix, Josh, great job. Great job. I remember trying it when it was in beta, and it was good then, but it was still in beta, and there was a few little quirks to it and everything. A lot of that seemed like it got ironed out. It looks great. There's a few things with Cinnamon that I find a little strange. Like every time I install a distro, I always change the theme I just have to. It's a weird quirk. So the whole on how to get to the themes in Cinnamon is just to me, it seems a little different than from any other desktop environment. So, but it's fine. And what I really like is how, as a plus, is how you're able to download and install themes straight from there instead of having to have to go and just install them separately. It's similar to like with KDE, and I think that is a real plus, and it's something that I really enjoy. It makes the whole process of just finding out new and exciting things that are available much easier on it. But overall, I just want to say that the distro is great. You're doing an excellent job, and I have it installed on I have a little a Dell XPS 12 that's got one of the little flip monitors, and even the touchscreen on it seems to work really well, and I'm actually going to keep it on that computer for a while.
Nice. Good points, Dave.
nice.
One thing I did fail to mention before that which I've run into a problem on a lot of the distros lately, because I did put this on the XPS, the 4K support out of the box was perfect. I didn't have to do anything. And that was nice to be able to boot up and not be magnifying glassing it in, trying to find the setting to get all that in there. So good work on that. If that's, I don't know how that works, but appreciate it.
All right, Tony, sir, how are you tonight?
I'm good, thanks, Rocco. And you?
I'm here, brother.
That's the important thing. Missed you last week.
Yep. What do you think about Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix, dude?
I like it. It's smooth. It works well. It does everything I want it to do. The theme is pretty good. I'm not sure about the orange, but it's better than green.
I happen to like the orange. I don't know why. I just have this gravitation towards orange, Tony. So I liked it.
Yeah, I
Each
love
their
green.
own. Lots of people like green, but nah. So, it's called choice.
Yep. Just sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's why we're all in Linux, because you have that freedom of choice. I couldn't find any faults at all with it, really. I'm running currently Linux Mint Cinnamon, and there's not an awful lot of difference between them. But there are a few differences, as somebody said earlier. In Mint, you've got the shield, whereas in the Ubuntu version, you've obviously got to do the updates the way Ubuntu does them, and that makes sense. If I had to choose between the two, which one I was going to run, it would be hard to choose. As I say, at the moment, I am on the new Linux Mint. But this could easily be what I would switch to. So I'd like to congratulate, I've forgotten his name, sorry, Joshua. Is it Joshua?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. The hole was getting deep there. No one was digging me out. I'd like to congratulate him on a job well done and wish you all the best for the future with it. It's one I would definitely be keeping an eye on.
That's
Very
great.
nice.
So yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and also we went a little too long with Dan. No problems with that. Rockwell also wanted to talk about, as you were kind of getting on the track there, about the key differences between UCR and Mint, and pretty glad that was mentioned. So I'll give you a brief overview of exactly what packages and software come with Mint that are not in UCR or not aimed to be in UCR. So the first thing is that, of course, Mint, if you haven't realized, they actually have a bunch of extra packages that are specific for them. The only way how we would be able to bring them to us is if we were to fork them. For example, Ubuntu Mate, they did that with Mint Desktop, which was a tool for the panel layouts of Mate and XFCE. So Mint Update or Mint Install, whatever that is, I think it's Mint Update probably. Whatever it is, with the shield, that's one of the stuff that I don't see any reason to bring downstream or upstream, whatever. I don't see any reason to bring it to UCR, because any package that is just Mint specific, they always will start with Mint. The list, it's like a Mint Stick, Mint Nanny, Mint Desktop, which is why, if you've ever noticed that in Linux Mint, if you start Firefox, it's going to automatically have some default settings for Linux Mint. That's what Mint Desktop does that. So you see things that may not always be worth bringing down. So those are mainly the software differences. You also might notice that the X apps are gone. They're not gone. I'm gonna add them in 20.10. So will for the Nemo file manager extensions. I'm actually working on backporting them right now. Same for the latest version of Cinnamon to 20.04 for any of those who want to get ahead of the boat. And then the last difference that would probably make a big big hit would be that of course the release cycle, it's more consistent with Linux Mint. They don't have dates, specific dates for releases, of course, or anything, but they have more periodic updates. We follow the 6-month schedule, and we will always have a release for you every 6 months, or of course you can stay on your long-term supported version for 3 years, I think, or 5 years if you're using extended security support, but mainly 3 years. So I think that just for that is probably mostly what covers it for the key differences between a UCR and Mint. Now, trying to compare them and find what is best for you, I would say it's your choice. I know that some people say that Ubuntu is bloated. Others will say that Linux Mint is just not good enough. I would say do whatever is closer to your home. If you like Mint, if you like its welcoming feel, its amazing welcome screen, which is actually pretty cool, not gonna lie, and its other Warpinator stuff that they just added in Linux Mint 20, if you are familiar with it and if you want to stay with it, if you've used it before, if you use it commonly, stay with Mint. And it doesn't affect us, and it doesn't affect them. It's whatever's good for you. But if you like the more Ubuntu based, where it's just going to be stock Ubuntu, you'll deal with the more default settings, sort of like Debian compared to Ubuntu, then you can maybe stick with UCR. And if you want to, you can always see what you can do to try to replace those Mint apps or whatnot. Of course, things will see as we progress on.
Well, cool. Thanks, Josh. Jinda, what would you like to contribute to the Ubuntu Cinnamon conversation?
Oh, thanks, Nate. I did it like I always do it. I pretended I was a noob and played stupid, which for me is pretty easy to do. I went to the website to download it. I can't find a checksum or an MD5 sum or something like that. I couldn't find one to check to see if the download was okay. But I wasn't too concerned because I knew that Ubuntu always does it kind of in the beginning with that little thing that says Control C to cancel. It did give me a hard time installing it. The installer did not work for me. I had to futz with it quite a bit, actually. I went online, and you're right that it's called Calamares, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. It did give me some troubles, and I did have to look how to get it to work. Evidently, because I had one of the Ubuntu's already installed on the hard drive, it didn't like it. You know what I mean? It said no or something. I guess that's what it was. It didn't like some partition or something on the hard drive. So I fixed that and got it to install. I was really happy with how it looked. It is very nice. It's gorgeous. I understand why you would want Cinnamon as a desktop. I get it. I see your point. I can't say it was a dumb idea to try to put this on Ubuntu. I really see the good idea of that. And I did kind of like the fact that it wasn't bloated like Mint in a way. Mint does have, I'm not saying bloated, but Mint has a lot of things that they add on to it in the beginnings. And I could see somebody saying they didn't want that or do want it. But yeah, thank you so much for letting me play with it. And thanks for doing it. I think you did great work. And keep it up. Is that okay? You're all right with that?
Of course. I'll always be willing to try to contribute as much as I can. Assuming that, nothing bad happens, which I don't think it will.
Yeah, I just couldn't find the MD5 sum or some kind of check.
Yeah, the default link just doesn't link to the default SourceForge page with all the files and listings. In our library of ISOs and stuff, there's folders 2019 and 2010. You can guess what those versions are. And then on the front page we have the latest release. We also have a minimal version too, and the checksums are there, which actually probably should fix, so it brings you to the default library.
Well, for a newbie guy,
Isn't that what it checks on the live boot, the checksum? Doesn't it check the checksum as well on the live boot?
Yeah, it does, but I don't think it I don't know. I have seen someone who wanted me to sign the GPG key for the ISO, but I don't know why, but technically it will do a disk check for you. It was actually turned on like a month before Ubuntu 20.04 got released, which I have no idea why, but it just did. So yeah, of course you can choose what you want. I don't know if it checks the checksum during the boot, but it will definitely check your files in the physical ISO file system.
Well, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jinda. Thomas, you have your hand up, your e-hand up. So what do you got?
So first off, I like the website. Website looks pretty cool. That's one thing that I really think I should start looking more at for the remixes, because a lot of people, for the remixes, some people may not have made a distro before. So knowing how to make a website for a distro can help a lot with that first impression. Booting it up, I noticed that your Plymouth theme you're still using the stock Ubuntu Plymouth theme, which is fine. But most of the other flavors tend to have their own Plymouth theme that is a little bit of a modified version of the Ubuntu Plymouth theme. So maybe for 2010 or for 2104, consider working on that. And it's more of like what's the word I'm wanting to use here? Like icing on the cake. You know, it just makes it look nicer and feel more professional. It's not mandatory or anything like that. I saw you were using Calamares. Works. I like Calamares. Of course, my only issue with that is you're using a Qt installer on a GTK system. So that's a lot of needless bloat. But if it works, it works. Okay. No, I had no issues with it. Calamares, whenever I'm using it on a disk that already has an OS installed, I have to go in and manually partition. So that's an issue with Calamares, not with Ubuntu Cinnamon. So, okay, that's fine. For me, the only real issues I had were whenever it starts up, it's always in 1024 by 768, not in 1080p. Not sure why that is. I think it's because it's in a virtual machine, and Cinnamon does not like virtual machines. But once I got it installed, the other issue I encountered was I had screen blanking. So like I was playing with 2048 and the area around the window just went black. And then part of it came back. And then the rest of it did. And then when the virtual machine detected my network printer, good job on that, by the way. Always good when it detects network printers. It had like this humongous black bar on the right side of the screen. And at first I thought like, oh, hey, he has some sort of notification panel, kind of like what Windows does. Cool, okay. And then later I saw another notification come up and it didn't have that huge black bar. And I realized that was a bug. I think that's probably also to do with the display drivers. I'm not 100% sure there. Otherwise, I like the default dark theme. The orange by default, it looks okay, but I feel like with all the orange, it's a little bit overzealous. Maybe tone it back a little bit. But the orange is fine, looks good. But yeah, just those two things were the only real issues I had. So keep up the good work, and here's for a good next release.
All right, and thank you. So I'm glad you liked the website about the Ubuntu Plymouth theme. Actually, in Unstable 20.10 for us, we actually do now have a functional Plymouth theme. It's going to be Ubuntu's. Just going to say Ubuntu Cinnamon at the bottom with the Ubuntu Cinnamon logo. I don't know if it says the manufacturer of your PC at the top. It should, but I'll take a look at it. But overall, that's fine. About the screen blinking and the notification bar, we don't have a notification bar on the panel or anything. The notifications will show up as like a box on the top right or somewhere else, depending on where you configure it.
Right, and like it showed up, it just, because there was a black box there, because I had more screen blanking, it looked like a notification panel, which confused me. And then I realized there wasn't one, and that it was just screen blanking.
Yeah. Of course, I don't know what to think of that. I do know that Ubuntu in the more older days, I think that I remember when I was first experimenting with Ubuntu, it was around 14.04. I estimate. I do remember that they didn't have the best of VirtualBox monitor support, but eventually it came that it would automatically detect the monitor and it would set the resolution to that, which was pretty amazing. And Linux Mint, I was actually going through their GitHub. They actually do have a repository that does have some automatic startup files that will, I think, detect it for you. But otherwise, about the window manager and the screen blinking, I actually have no idea what that is, but probably just it's VirtualBox. VirtualBox can be VirtualBox.
All right, thanks, Thomas. I actually kind of like the orange. I don't know. It's just
Yes,
me.
I did.
I think it looks. I think it looks pretty good.
And you don't, and Thomas, you don't say that about the green of some distros, that it's too much and they need to dial it back.
Well, when you have an orange accent theme and bright orange wallpaper, it's a little bit much. Maybe throw some other colors in the wallpaper, tone it down just a little bit. Because
I wonder if it's more orange than, say, a green of like Ubuntu Mate. Is there more orange in the cinnamon theme than there is on a green theme with Ubuntu Mate?
I think there is more orange than there was of the green in like Linux Mint, because when I tried Linux Mint, it's a dark background in this release, with just small green highlights.
Yeah.
So it's there, but it's not overwhelming. And I think that's the key. Is it's cool to have the orange accent, perfectly fine. Just don't let it be overwhelming.
That's fair.
Yeah.
It's fair.
Makes sense, actually. Might be worth patching with the icons or something. I was talking with Yusuf Phillips from basically one of the Ubuntu users. I zoomed with him and he gave me feedback, and he said that the themes might want to be adjusted a little bit in terms of what's default.
Paul's the man.
Paul, you're killing us, Paul.
Paul, if we could put your screen on Daniel's, Daniel would disappear.
Bravo, Paul.
Oh, I thought the camera was broken. Are you referring to the fact that, for you listeners who can't see what's happening, Paul's camera is just orange? Okay, that was intentional. So
pretty
Paul
much.
just... Okay, well, first off, Mr. Cubicle Nate, you need to be a little thankful that we're not using green.
Really?
Why?
Thankful.
You're looking at me with those big eyes.
It's the only eyes I have.
About the orange colors. Well, I have some good news for you. Number one, just so you guys know, it's not the same hex code as the Ubuntu logo. And number two, it's orange. Get used to it.
I liked it. I liked it personally. Anyway, whatever. Colin, I see you've got your hand up. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, to be honest. I mean, it fades, it's orange and it fades into a dark sort of brownish thing. I'm not really sure what's going on there. I think it's all right. It looks good. Ubuntu Cinnamon remix, I quite liked it. I made a video about 3 weeks ago about the Cinnamon remix, and it actually run quite well. And I did like the implementation of the panel layouts, which work quite well. And nobody has mentioned yet. I don't think they have anyway. But the panel layout was probably one of the highlights of the distro, and quite enjoyed that. The other thing, when it comes to the snaps and all that in the store, there is, in that box up the top right hand corner, there is no way of changing to snaps or filtering apt repositories or anything like that. So somebody said there was, but I did notice there wasn't either. The only operating system I've seen with a filter is actually Ubuntu in the Discover. That's the only one I've seen with a filter on an Ubuntu base. So, but Cinnamon Remix, I ran it for about, I think, a couple of weeks, and it worked really well. I didn't have any problems with it. And talking about calamaris, it's a strange beast, calamaris, because most of the time you really need to use gparted to set up your partitions, and you'll never have a problem with calamaris. Some of them do. I think it depends on what version you're running. Some of them will partition quite okay. Some of them you could be fighting with. So just a little bit of a tip: if you're going to use calamaris, try gparted to set up your partitions, and you'll never have any issues most times. And yeah, with VirtualBox, Cinnamon, because I'm a big Cinnamon fan. I've been using it for a very long time. always has issues in VirtualBox. It does not like VirtualBox at all for some reason, Cinnamon. So that's where Thomas was probably getting his issues from. But good job, Thomas. Joshua, I think you've done a really good job there, and hopefully it gets better. So it sounded like you're not planning on putting any Mint specific items in your Ubuntu at all, not even Warpinator or anything like that. Is that the case?
Yes, it is.
Okay, cool. So you just want it to be your own thing, which is cool. That's okay. It's good.
Totally fair.
But yeah, great job. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Colin. Yeah, and the other partitioning tool you can use that we also have in Ubuntu is KD Partition Manager. That also works
Okay,
pretty
yep.
good. Yep.
Yep.
So feel free to use that one, and obviously you'll find that in Plasma as well.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Yep. So pretty great stuff. One of the issues that happens often is if you have swap turned on before you start the partition, or before you start the partitioning in Calamares, it won't let you overwrite that because it's an active partition. And so you have to turn the swap off in order for it to overwrite that.
Right.
All righty. Eris, Eris, I seen you got your hand up. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I tried out Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix, and I like the orange. It's kind of distinct as far as distros goes, I think. I just had a couple of questions. As far as like throughout the life of this release, will there be other updates to it, or is this pretty much like, you know how it's, Linux Mint usually makes updates with the point releases? Will there be other updates at all, or is this just pretty much how it's going to be?
Oh, it's gonna be the same. It's basically, the goal is to become an Ubuntu flavor. All Ubuntu flavors follow the Ubuntu release schedule. Of course, we'll have releases every 6 months, and for LTS releases like this, every February and August we will have point releases, which will just be everything we rebuild it. So so everything is secure for those just trying to install it.
Oh, and my other question is, the installer requires, I think, 2 gigabytes of RAM and 16 gigabytes of a hard disk. Is that the installer's requirement, or is that the distro's requirements? Because I have a Chromebook and it's around 15, 16 gigabytes. If I wanted to put that, I don't know if that's going to be an issue because I don't have 16 gigs, I think.
Oh, I actually did see what happened, and when I asked the person I was working with, can't remember who it was, on why the requirements were set like that, it's actually the same ones apparently that Ubuntu had. 2 gigabytes, 2 GB RAM, and 16 for hard disk.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks. Dan, I see you got your hand up again. Go right ahead.
I just wanted to double down on what Thomas was saying about his screen acting up. Well, I was having the same issue like I was talking about with having Clementine open and starting a song. Clementine has a hook where it starts a notification, and it might be that the notification system in some cases might be causing these screen issues. It's possible, because that's the way it looked to me, and it was on a monitor that had nothing else on it. That's kind of what I wanted to add. I had no problems with the Calamares installer, but I use a 3-partition system. I got home, and system, and then boot EFI. So it all slides right in.
All right, Leo, you got something for Joshua?
Yeah, I actually had a question about, I guess it'd be Cinnamon 4.6. Is that going to land in 20.10?
Yes, it will. And if you want it, if you want on 20.04, before today's show, I was currently backporting it. So in a few days or about a week, it should be ready for you.
Well, that was my question as well, Joshua. What is the plan as far as keeping up with the Cinnamon version for Linux Mint?
Okay. I would say always try to be as caught up as possible, but don't push out an update that you know is not going to be stable, unless you're syncing it to unstable. the Debian Cinnamon team, there were some packaging issues, so they couldn't get it out as soon as possible. But actually, Cinnamon 4.6.6, the latest version of Cinnamon, which is used in Linux Mint 20, is actually currently in the Debian repos now for unstable. So eventually, of course, as long as we can tag along with Debian, I can always sync it up to Ubuntu. Rick Mills is a master of the universe of the repositories.
He is.
Yeah, that's what they call
He
it.
literally is. Yeah.
He is.
He is actually.
I
He
know.
is.
I know.
Both
Yeah.
senses.
So yeah, he is. So yeah, the shell master of the universe can sync my packages for me. For now until I get membership. But and then yeah, and then it can be synced.
So are you planning on making an announcement through a blog or through your website or on Twitter that, you know, hey, if you want the latest version of Cinnamon, you can use these backports?
Yeah. I typically in blog posts or which I haven't made one in a while. It's my fault I haven't. I probably will soon. Or but it's definitely gonna be on Twitter.
All right. Anything else you want to add, Joshua?
No. So someone also asked me earlier to talk about what's gonna be trying to come up in Green Cinnamon 20.10. So one of the things I was doing was about also the layout switcher. People were talking about how exactly I got the idea. When I was creating the remix, someone actually brought up the idea of a layout switcher. And apparently there was another Linux distro called Wasta Linux. It's also an Ubuntu-based Cinnamon distro, and it has its own tools and it has a Cinnamon layout tool. And I took interest in it. I immediately forked it, and he's actually recently made it. So now it actually is now more available for all Linux distros, which is pretty cool. But the thing is, because it's Cinnamon, you know, it's written in Zenity at the moment, and he's trying to switch it to Yod. I want it in Python, and I also liked Ubuntu's Mate Tweak, which is a fork of Mint Desktop, and I really just wanted to be able to have it work for Cinnamon too. So that's what is the thing that I'm working on if I get really bored. I want to see if I can get a Cinnamon tweak working, and I did get the window to launch, so that's a start. But of course, it's going to take a lot more time and work. So
yep.
Yeah, that is that. Next thing, without giving too much away, for what's next, I would say that for what we're trying to do, we're trying to make it, or at least I am, for the most, let's say, personalized desktop that you can choose with your choice. There is a package that I do have. It's actually public. I'm not going to tell you where it is or what it is. Unless you're really smart, you'll be able to find it. But I do have a package that I've been working on. It's pretty big, very big actually. Which was pretty fun to compile and everything. And so yeah, I'll also be working on that. And of course, besides the XApps, which I went over, the Nemo File Manager also has extra extensions that will actually be something I'm going to plan on actually trying to bring them to Ubuntu. I don't think I'll be able to get into Debian, nor do I know if they'll want it because they have their reasons and there's other stuff, so I can't really do the most with them. But otherwise, yeah, so that's basically all I can say for software, new apps. I will just say, try and make the most out of what's possible and trying to add anything that will make the user experience better. And of course, I'm sure that I decided that I kept pushing the welcome back. I really wanted a welcome screen. It was just, it's pretty complicated, and I think that if we are an official flavor, it makes it a lot easier. And we kind of fit in with that in between of traditional and modern. We're a mix, so I can't decide that yet. But of course, we'll see what happens, and that's pretty much all I can say.
Very nice. All right, is there anybody else that wants to get in on the Ubuntu Cinnamon remix conversation?
I just have one question to ask, or a couple questions to ask you, Joshua. I had to think your name again.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you got the calamaris working, how excited were you when it actually installed and you got to see the thank you for installing Ubuntu Cinnamon when it actually worked? What was that level of excitement when you got that working?
Are you talking about? Okay,
Just
yeah,
in general,
I know it's a joke, but are you talking about when?
No, it's not a joke.
It's not a joke.
How excited were you when you finally understood it, figured it out, and made it work? What was that like? Tell me about that moment, you being, however old you are, a kid, and then you actually get this working and you can, install Ubuntu Cinnamon. How excited were you?
Oh, with calamaris? Oh, well, actually,
Yeah.
we sort of kind of took a little bit of some advantage over our bases. So thank you, Dan.
I don't want facts. I just want to know, how excited were you? Were you?
Oh my god!
I'm thinking like,
I was just like,
all
okay,
right,
cool. That was what it was. It was just like an okay, cool, But there's other stuff I do, and if you really want to see the best of my reactions, I really don't want to start needing to start recording me in my personal life of everything I do, so you can see that every time I finally
I'm just curious.
Something, you can see my reaction to everything.
See, like in my mind,
I'll tell you this: when I started trying to create the remix, I was an absolute. Oh, my notebook just fell. I was an absolute dum-dum who decided that it would be a great idea that instead of using Debian's pre-packaged Cinnamon, I'll just rebuild it from scratch. And then when I got all of it working, because I also wasted my time with fiddling with dependencies, and I also installed the Mint stuff because I'm stupid. When I was pretty excited when I got it to work, I was like, yes! And so there you go.
That's what I wanted. That's all I wanted.
That's all I wanted. Well, look, the reason that
cool.
Nate
Thank
brings
you.
it up is because there's a lot of work involved, Joshua, and you got roadblocks that you hit as you're going along and developing. And when you finally get it going, there has to be some level of excitement that, you finally got this going.
The other piece to that, Joshua,
I don't typically have those.
is
like nice.
Is enjoying the journey. Like that's a major step. I mean, what you're doing is an awesome thing. But if you get too caught up in the next thing and just fixing and patching and not stop and smell the boot screen once in a while, type thing, and enjoy those little things. I mean, the first time I got Arch running from scratch, ran through my house, right? Probably could never do it again. So yeah, enjoy those little moments, man. That you earned them. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Nate,
and
that's
I
an
want to
awesome
tack on
question.
to
It's a great question.
And I want to tack on to that. If this is in a way your creation. It's your baby, okay? Because this was initially your idea, right? And
not everyone likes my baby, but it's good enough.
Not everybody's going to like it. Not everybody likes everyone. I guarantee you there's someone out there who hates me, but that's okay. Okay? It's okay for people not to like your creation. But the thing is, you should be proud of it. And whenever you get to a milestone, like that first installation that Nate was talking about, you should celebrate.
Yep.
Because I remember, so when I was building my own system installer, the first time it actually worked, the amount of profanity that came out of my mouth and my elation was off the charts. Because
good thing you weren't here at the time, Thomas.
Exactly. I'm pretty sure the people in the dorms next to me were.
I mean, like, how did your mom feel about it? Like,
I was not. She was not. I was at college at the time. She wasn't there.
Okay.
Hi, Mom. My roommates were questioning me.
Sorry, back there.
Well, I mean, I don't always freak out when I see stuff. Of course, I'll be like, nice or cool.
Yeah.
But
and I get, like, if it's 3 or 4 a.m. that you finally get it to work, and you're just brain dead at that point, not having that reaction. That's perfectly fine and valid.
Thomas, let me just toss this quote from you from Anna Rita in the chat. Nate wants to know if you were jumping up and down and doing high fives and doing the happy dance and TikTok photos.
Not TikTok, not high fives, but everything else, yes.
All right.
I felt
We got to move on because we're going over time. But Joshua,
Yeah.
I can say that I probably speak for everybody here when I say thank you for all of the effort and the work that you put into this. I think there is a huge area of people that want to run Cinnamon and maybe not want to run Linux Mint. They want to run an Ubuntu base, so all of it is much appreciated.
Yep. Thank you very much. And yeah, let's inflow the other Linux conversations.
Hey, look, we got some people down at the bottom. We got some people that didn't get to speak yet. DJ, welcome, dude.
Thank you. Nice to be here again.
It's always good to have you, brother. You bring that level of technical expertise like way up when you just joined the room, dude. Jacob, it's been a while, brother. How are you?
Well, thankfully, I'm not feeling good this weekend, so my family's quarantined me into the bedroom,
Oh
and
my
I can
gosh.
actually join everybody, which is kind of cool. And if I may, that conversation, I came in late. Holy cow, it was just beautiful. Like, this community loves one another. There's like feedback going on. I mean, it's like just so different from some of the rest of my last week or so. Like, it's awesome. So thank you for letting me watch that today.
Well, you're always welcome, brother. Jason, you came in late. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
We are here, brother. That's what I can tell you. We are here.
Yeah.
Jason, I
It's been a rough
gotta
week.
say, Jason, I really like your shirt, and I'm also wearing a Star Wars shirt.
Nice.
Yep.
So there you
Yep.
go.
Yep.
I got my ad on.
And Dolphin is here as well. Dolphin, what's up, brother?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, that's a plus. Okay.
Tell us you have a Klingon shirt on, please.
I don't have a Klingon shirt on. Not today. This one is.
I like that. Yes. That's very good too.
Because you need that wooden sword.
Well,
especially in COVID, you need to keep people away.
Right. Dolphin, you made a Twitter post about Star Labs.
Did I make a Twitter post?
Yeah, I
did
think
make a
you
Twitter
did.
post.
Well, we've been covering all of the different companies that are working with Linux distros for having Linux on a laptop, desktop, whatever, by default. And MX is now in that area.
Yeah, that's like crazy for us. They're not. Star Labs looks like they got a good product. I haven't seen an actual machine yet. They promised us a couple, but yeah, it was just kind of exciting to be in with the same group. They were already offering Ubuntu machines, and I think Zorin.
Mm-hmm.
And here in the last month, they've added several smaller distributions. Manjaro's on there, Elementary, and then little old MX is last of the party with them. But it's cool. They initially started looking at our usual standard stable release on one of their older machines, but it wouldn't run on their newest machine. And they, dang it, we created that AHS version of MX, and they're going to run that on their flagship when it comes out. So that's really exciting for us. We're little guys. We don't really expect to be. We never really thought we'd be pre-installed anywhere, and we are. And it's just kind of exciting. And I don't care if they sell 3 computers with MX on it. It's just awesome to be there, right? I've like I said in my blog post, we'll call it a win for the little guy today.
Yep.
Well, that's cool.
I
That
like,
is really,
I like
really
that you call it. I like that you call it Oz.
Yes, it's Oz.
It's a good
Yeah,
name, Oz.
we jumped on that immediately. That didn't get past the first discussion. We started calling it Oz. We almost named it OZ, and we decided that was too meta, so we went back to AHS. But yeah, so Steve-O, he's the original brainchild and behind it, and he's like he's the Wizard of Oz. So
there you go.
But yeah, it's been great. So we started talking to him about, I guess it's a couple months ago. We didn't even have an OEM set up in our installer at the time, and they came to us and
so
said, hey,
so what are they
people
going
actually asked them to have MX, and I couldn't believe it.
What are they going to offer it on, Dolphin?
It'll be on right now. You can pre-order the Mark IV.
Okay.
From their website, and you can choose it with MX installed. I actually sent a picture to my dad I said, look what you can order now. He was like, great. That's awesome. Actually, he did. He sent me a big thumbs up. So we actually jumped on getting an actual OEM installer set up so that they could do their thing, and so they can create users when you first boot up and all that stuff. And they use that the firmware updater daemon tool. And so we just imported. They needed a later version than Debian had, so we just imported that into our own repo. And so that's all going forward. They'll have their own image. It'll be MX, but it'll have their own image that they'll put on. We haven't seen the exact tweaks that they've made, but I don't know. I'm pretty excited. And it's a computer. They know what it doesn't have on it. It doesn't have a Windows button.
I love it.
Now I know some people out there like, Sentence 76 got the little, whatever button, and other people got Ubuntu buttons and everything. This one just says super on it. And that's fine with me.
Yep. That's awesome, dude.
It's exciting.
Congratulations.
We're thrilled. Thank you. Our project, we used to call him our project manager. I'm going to start calling him our business manager, Jerry. He's been in the most contact with them. And then he's like, we need this and this and this to work. I'm like, okay, I guess we got something to do. So went and made it all work. But yeah, I've actually got my eyeball on that Mark IV and 16 gigs of RAM and up to terabyte SSD options. And it's not a junker. They've even their low end machine's not a junker. They've got they got two machines, and I don't know. I hope they feel as good as they look when we get them, because as they read, because I'm kind of excited.
Yep, I would be too. All right, moving on. We got a few topics that we need to discuss, but I think we need to probably discuss podcasts right now. I mean, just saying that there's no lack of podcasts out there about the Linux area, Linux desktop. But now there's one more. And so Joe, he sent me a telegram. What did you send me the other day, Joe, in that telegram?
All of it? You mean?
Well, I mean, just
the stuff about my history. I mean,
don't tell the personal stuff.
Okay,
don't tell the personal stuff. Just
the toenail thing. Okay.
No.
Yeah. So I did feel there was a little bit of a void. One of my favorite podcasts was no longer happening. One of them. And so I asked Rocco kind of what his thoughts were and how he felt about that little arena of podcasting, the niche within a niche type thing. And he was like, I'm busy.
That's exactly what I said.
Exactly what
I'm busy.
And I thought, well, man, I'm gonna call somebody else. So no, he was actually just really busy at the time. Called me an hour later. We spent a couple hours chatting about it and came up with some ideas. And we think we definitely had to add a few voices.
Yep.
But yeah, it was do you think this is worth doing type question. Is it an ad? Is it something that's missing?
Well, to add on to that, when I interviewed Joe Resington for Linux Spotlight, he said that, if you're thinking about making a Linux Spotlight, or if you're thinking about making a podcast, just don't. And just talk amongst your friends and don't worry about putting out another podcast, because there's plenty out there. And he's probably right, but we're going to do it anyway. So the podcast that Joe was talking about was Choose Linux, and that is like on the shelf at the moment. And that was also one of my favorite podcasts because it talked about the desktop. It concentrated on the desktop. And that's what I love most about Linux is the desktop. And that's the one thing that I want to talk about the most. So when Joe asked me about it, I was like so enthused. I couldn't do anything at the moment because, like I said, I was busy, but I was so enthused. And we talked, and the first guy we decided that we were going to add is Dan Simmons. So Dan is going to be a part of that podcast. And I don't know, Dan, what do you think?
I'm super excited about this. I think it's a great. You guys came to me and I was like, yeah, I don't know, but yeah, no, I'm super excited now that especially after we got rolling here. I think this is going to be really fun.
Yep. And we were discussing amongst ourselves of what, how we were going to plan this out and what we were going to do. And, I'm thinking to myself, we don't really need a fourth, but man, if we were looking for a fourth, there's one guy that I know would be a perfect fit for that. And that was Leo Chavez from the Midcast.
Yeah. So all I'm going to do is really just talk about Linux Mint and Cinnamon the whole time.
That's it. That's all he's going to talk about.
Needed a balanced viewpoint.
Yeah. Like, I know you like Plasma and all, but hey, have you heard about the Cinnamon thing?
Well, this podcast is called Linux User Space, and it's going to be focused on everything that's involved with the user. Whether that's we're going to have a section for a discussion about distros. We are going to have a section to discuss about community issues. We're going to have maybe some application love from Leo that's going to teach us a few things. So we're going to have a multi-faceted podcast, but it's going to be focused all towards the Linux desktop. So the first trailer is out. The trailer includes basically just a minute-long trailer of what the podcast is about, what we're going to do. And the first release will be July 13th, and we will be releasing an episode every 2 weeks. It's going to be audio only because that makes it way easier to do than a video podcast. A video podcast is like a ton of work. But I am really excited about it, and I hope everybody enjoys it. And I don't know if there's a need for it, but man, I'm going to enjoy talking about it.
Of course there's a need for it. Who wouldn't have done it? Who makes things that aren't needed?
Right?
Us.
Well, so if you want to subscribe to the podcast, you can. Hopefully, I've been having issues. It's been hit or miss whether or not I can search and find it. It is submitted to Apple Podcasts and everywhere else. But if you should be able to search for it by just putting in Linux User Space, 3 words. And, you can go from there, or you can go to linuxuserspace.show, and that will take you over to Fireside and show you all the episodes that are there. There's only the trailer there right now. So July 13th, that's when it's coming up.
It just popped up. In,
Sorry, what was the name
Overcast.
of the podcast?
Linux User Space?
What? Linux User Space. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, there it is there. Okay. Thanks, Dan.
Somebody
what
want
kind
to...
of what kind of length format are you looking at for the podcast, Rocco?
Well, we're shooting for an hour. I don't really want to go over that because anything over an hour is going to be a lot to listen to. But I don't want to also cut it at an hour and cut off any great conversation. So we're just going to run with it and see how it works out. But shooting for an hour. And, hopefully we may even have some people on to interview and distro developers, maybe. Just saying.
We don't know any of those guys. Never bumped into them at all.
But I'm really excited about it. So, yeah, you should check it out. All right. Moving on. Well, before I move on, do you guys have anything you want to talk about? You guys got anything you've been doing this week?
Desktops, maybe?
What have you been doing, Colin?
Uh-oh.
You said it. You opened your mouth, so now you got to talk, brother.
Oh, no, I was just joking, I haven't been doing much, to be honest. I haven't had a lot of time. So, yeah, I'm just chilling, looking at things, and videos are a little bit few and far between at the moment because of time factors. But let's just say I've been looking at Ubuntu again. So let's just say that.
Okay. Awesome.
Good choice.
Colin's so laid back, he actually commented on my YouTube channel that since I was installing videos this week, that he just wasn't going to bother with doing anything. He was just going to hang back.
Well, I don't know if you guys heard about, Dolphin, you mentioned the Star Labs and MX being on there, but Dell is apparently offering 2004 on the developers editions now, which I think is another awesome thing. Every week, it almost seems like you're hearing more and more stories about hardware and Linux. And we've been trying for this for I don't know how long. And we've always had that lack of visibility on hardware manufacturers' websites. And, before it was Dell was, you had to go to a different blog to find a Linux-based laptop on Dell's site. But now you can just go to their site and find the Linux laptops. And with 2004 being released on it, I think it's just fantastic that we just continually, every week almost, hear something more about some other hardware on, or some other Linux distro on specific hardware. I don't know. What do you guys think? You're the Linux desktop? Come on.
Hey, we're getting there. We're getting there. Hey, we keep adding them, right?
We're
It's
getting
as
close
close as
as
we've
we're
gotten.
not there yet.
Come on, Thomas, stop being a downer, will you?
Hey, I'm
definitely
trying to
shows
be
that-
optimistic here. I will only say it's the year of Linux desktop when we finally have a majority market share.
Oh, well.
That is
okay.
not a valid metric.
But it does show that there's a value there, because these are companies that make money, putting out computers. So the fact that they're seeing Linux as a target, a market that they want to, hit, that's amazing. These are good waves in the right direction.
We are
Well, I'm gonna
closer
say-
to. Oh,
I
go
was
ahead,
gonna say-
Colin.
I was going to say, did anybody else catch that Linux was mentioned at the keynote of WWDC this week? When has that ever happened? Right?
Yep.
It was towards the end. It's, hey, we're going to ARM architecture. Oh, and by the way, it'll run Linux. There's something valuable here in what we do, and somebody started to notice in a lot of different spaces. That's awesome.
Yep.
I was going to say, Rocco, if we can find anything good about the year 2020, it's the year of the Linux desktop. I sit well with that. Got to find some good in this year.
You can always find good in a year, depending on your perspective, Colin. So there's been a lot. It's been a rough year for everybody, but you can always find the good in it. All right. Next topic that I kind of want to talk about is Nate, sir. You decided that you were going to put your videos up somewhere besides YouTube.
Yes, Your Honor, that is correct.
So where did you put them?
I decided. So I decided I would follow in your footsteps and a few others. I just started putting. I made that little link to my YouTube. Not that there's much on there, and I'm working on some other stuff, but yeah. So I got that link in there. It took like 4 days for it to transfer over, but yeah. So I'm on LBRY, LBRY, something cubicle night.
.tv.
And, that'll. Yeah, that thing. .tv. I figure, YouTube is where everybody goes. That's where most people have things. But should YouTube just all of a sudden poof go away, I'd like to have a backup. So I'm looking at it as just a backup. This way, if my computer and my house burn down, I got the stuff, someplace. So we're all set.
I really, really want to see LBRY succeed. I don't know if they will or not, but I really, really want to see them succeed. I want there to be that alternative to YouTube that people can go to and get content. It still needs some updates. The commenting section in LBRY is not very good. Okay, we'll just leave it at that. It's not very good. You can comment on a video, but there's no way for me as a person who puts videos on there to go to a comment section and see a comment. So you would have to click on every single video that you have to see comments. And that's kind of like terrible because, if somebody takes the time to comment on your video, you want to go and you want to talk to them. You want to interact with them. And that puts a big bridge or a big wall in the way of trying to, communicate with the community. But like I said, they make updates all the time. And I hope that at some point they fix that because that to me is one of the biggest issues. But like I said, I really want them to succeed because I think they have, there's a place for them. And there's a lot of people that are hungry they would rather get their content somewhere else than YouTube. But there just isn't a place for that. So.
Yeah, and I think
they've been diversification.
Right. I think they've been putting some pressure on PeerTube because I hear they're coming out with some new features as well. So I think the back and forth competition between the alternatives is really a good thing.
Yep. All right. I don't know. Maybe I talked about it before, but I don't think I did. Did we talk about wobbly windows before? Because that's a big thing to me.
Changed my world this week. Let me just tell you.
So I know it's not. I know it's just a aesthetic and it's no big deal. But man, I was so happy when I saw that extension in GNOME to enable wobbly windows, and it works so well. I mean, you download the extension, you install it, and you turn it on, and instantly you have wobbly windows from yesteryear. And I think it's totally awesome. I don't know about you guys.
I've been dragging around the Zoom meeting throughout the meeting just to watch Tony and Jason and Colin at the bottom of my screen, just kind of.
Really cool. What's funny though? I don't have it enabled right now, the tiling aspect of Pop, right? Because I have to have Zoom in a certain size. Otherwise, to be on the screen where everybody can see it the right way. So I turn off tiling because that has a tendency to, I believe, obviously move them.
To learn a little bit more still. I think the tiling.
Yep.
I don't know if your experience has been the same, but.
Well, it'd be nice to have a floating window, right? I mean, some of the tiling windows managers let you do that. So you want to be able to pop one out and have it be floating.
Mm-hmm.
That would take care of that, I guess.
Yep.
There's a feature request there.
But when you're using the tiling and you enable the wobbly windows, it is so cool because it gives that extra effect almost to when it places the window. It's so awesome.
Love it.
So if you're a GNOME fan, Adam, come on. I know you're a GNOME fan, but you're more of a plain vanilla GNOME fan.
Okay.
So you just download this extension, dude, and you install it and you have wobbly windows back. Aren't you excited?
Not at all.
Okay, good. Moving on.
I want to say
I prefer
wobbly windows.
My rigid windows. I don't think they're rigid enough. Sometimes they tear.
What are you going to say, Nate?
I think wobbly windows are important. They've been a vital part of my desktop. We talked about, I think we built wobbly windows like maybe a year ago. I don't know. And I've forgotten about them and I turned them back on in Plasma. It's really made my experience so much more springy and I like it.
Springy.
I don't know. I tried, we put CompBiz. I tried CompBiz on top of MX a couple of weeks ago, and it had the wobbly windows thing. And when you snap it to the edge, I don't know, it felt like bubble gum on the bottom of my shoe. I just wanted to grab the window and pull it off the screen. Because it just wouldn't, I don't know, I feel like it didn't move. I'm sure it's all in my head. It's all the effect and everything, but it felt weird having it stretch around.
Yes,
like that.
but often you can do wobbly windows wrong. Like you can have it too wobbly.
You're holding it wrong.
No, I'm serious though. If you turn on wobbly windows in KDE Plasma, that is almost the perfect amount of wobble that you want in a window. If you don't want to grab the window and have it like just stretch across this, that's ridiculous. Okay. But just that extra little jingle kind of, and that's what this tiling window extension.
Paul's got us.
See, it's not too much wobble. It's just a little bit.
Wait, I feel that this conversation requires some sort of standard unit of measure of window wobble.
You're right, it does.
And I think Rocco just said it. And that what was shoot, I forgot it already. This is terrible. This is what happens when you it was well, not wobble. What, I can't remember what you said. But we need something. Jiggle. That was it. We need the jiggle factor.
Yep.
The jiggle factor.
But
the jiggle factor.
This GNOME extension is almost exactly the same type of wobble you would get from just turning KDE on and not messing with anything. And with KDE, you can set the wobble and you can do ridiculous things with it, but you don't really want to do that because that really messes it up. You can do it wrong, dude. But with this, it's pretty good. You should try it.
So there's no adjustment?
No
adjustment to the...
I think Colin, there is a certain adjustment. If I'm not mistaken, I did go into the settings and I thought there was an adjustment for certain things, but I didn't change any of it because, like I said, I just think it's that perfect amount. Not too much, but enough to give you that feel.
You can adjust the friction, the spring, the restore factor.
Yeah, Rocco, I did it the one day and it made my computer unusable. I did it
on max settings.
Oh wow. Yeah, I'm sure, Paul.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I'm sitting about 20 friction, 40 spring, 4 on my restore factor. I mean, see, if you go crazy on this stuff, guys, I'm telling you, you will swing it and it will shake off the screen.
This is such a
and stick
deep
to the wall.
conversation.
So you balance.
It's
a little is good. Too much is too much.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about with this wiggly jiggly window stuff.
Come on, Jason. Don't tell me you've never had wobbly windows enabled. Don't act like
I don't know
that.
what wobbly windows is. I like a window on the screen that sits there and does what it's supposed to do. That is to have, things in it. And that's about it. Not the wiggle and all that wavy stuff that Paul was doing.
Ah,
Eric Adams is just in time.
Just in time to save us.
wobbly windows.
How you been, brother?
I had to stop this ridiculous conversation.
On Eric.
Good Lord, what did I walk into?
What did you wobble into?
Come on, Eric. You have ran
Jiggled right
KDE.
into the conversation.
You have ran KDE, Eric, and you run GNOME. So tell me you don't like a little wobble with your Windows.
So I'm imagining now it's about 2009, 2010. And yeah, I remember. Yeah, no, wobbly windows, the dissolving, scorching windows,
The
all that stuff.
flames.
And I remember being,
Flames.
because I was in IT, I would show other IT people, and they were like, "How did you do that?" And I'm like, well, you can't run Windows and do it. So, yeah, no, that was. Oh, there he is. Paul's
Paul,
wiggling me around.
That's the appropriate amount of wobble.
See, I can't do that the wobble thing. That would give me like seasick or motion sickness or something.
Yes, but it's not like you're just moving windows around. I mean, maybe Joe is just moving windows around to wobble, but you don't move them around to wobble them.
I
You
mean, I got
it just
time.
gives you
I got
that
time.
effect.
Yes, you do.
As you're moving your windows.
But why would you need it to wiggle or wobble or whatever you want to call it anyway if you're not going to make it do it?
It gives
All
that
right.
premium feel. Just saying.
No. Okay. When you're in a meeting and it's really, really boring, especially these like net meetings, you just start moving your boss. Wait, I shouldn't say that. You start moving the meeting around, and it makes the meeting entertaining. This way
Well, for you, I guess maybe.
See, that's where you might need that bubblegum sticky window because you don't want to like throw your boss across your monitor scape. You want it stuck to one screen.
It's the fidget spinner for your desktop.
Right?
Oh, I have cats. I have cats that come visit me for that.
Speaking of
Your
making,
cats are moving furniture in the background, Jason.
speaking of making meetings fun,
Those
I
are well-trained
forgot
cats.
that I had my soundboard connected up, and
Mhm.
I accidentally let like a fart noise go in a meeting the other day. On Teams. Yeah.
Noise.
That's
we
no
were
good.
just sitting there, it got quiet for about 10 seconds, and then like they just continued on like nothing happened. It was
Did anybody
wonderful.
notice who it was?
Well, see, that's when you need the blur, right?
At least-
That's for that moment. You need the blur, not the
At
wobble.
least you didn't
More
stand up in the
blur.
middle of the meeting and not have pants on.
Well,
how come no one's mentioned Magic Lamp? Why hasn't anybody mentioned Magic Lamp? That's awesome.
Oh, I like Magic Lamp.
I have no idea what that is.
Yeah.
Either.
Jason,
Magic lamps-
come with us on this journey, okay?
I use Linux to use Linux. I don't get all these wiggly wobblies, magical lamp.
I also have Magic Lamp going.
You got to have fun with it,
Lord.
dude. You got to have fun
Nate's
with
on
it.
it. Yeah.
Does wobbly windows work with i3?
I have no idea.
You have to shake your whole monitor all at the same time,
right,
for it to work
physically.
I can't believe that I'm just seeing a bunch of grown men just talking about watching their windows just wiggle a little bit on the screen.
Hey, Josh, remember,
There are no grown men in this chat.
I'm this many, Josh. I'm this many.
Josh, and I'll tell you, after about 10 years in IT, when you're sitting there staring at the screen waiting for something to happen, you get really bored and you're like, I'm just going to entertain myself.
Oh, trust me, I know. Yeah, I've been doing IT for 20 plus years, and yeah, it's.
See, Jason, that's your problem. You need a little bit more wobbly in your IT.
Oh, trust me, I had enough wobbly today with this lady that didn't even know how to do a simple system restart.
24
Jason, all
hours.
those monitors behind you, do you realize the amount of wobble you could have going on
Right?
at any given moment?
Dude, it'd be like a one of those oil lamp things. It'd be like tripping in the 80s, dude, with an Elvis painting and some black lights.
See, this is totally why the unit of measure is needed. If you're giving tech support over the phone and you can have them type in a command with the precise amount of wobble jiggles, you're gold after that.
Absolutely.
I think we ran off the rails here.
Yeah,
we've been off the rails.
My cat's going to tell me it's treat time.
I might be grown, but I'm not grown up.
Yeah.
Nope.
I will guarantee you there are men in this room that have jiggled their windows just to see if the jiggle effect was still active.
Well, I got the
I'm
jiggle
sorry.
effect right here.
Oh yeah, Dan's
Dolphin,
nodding his
I
head.
was
He
like-
knows what he's saying.
I went in an entirely different place when you said that. So.
All right, we're going to put this back on the rails a little bit.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate you stopping in.
We've gone completely off the rails. So, Jacob, you mentioned the whole Apple thing and their plan that they have come out with and their talk, their whatever they call it. They have
apple pie.
Yeah, they decided they were going to go away from Intel, I guess, and do their own CPUs and stuff. Does anybody have any thoughts on, does this affect Linux at all? Does this affect Intel to the point where it will be a trickle-down effect to affect Linux?
So,
I mean, Rocco, the first thing I did is put a Apple sticker on my Raspberry Pi, and it's now an Apple Pie. That's how it works, right?
Is that what it is?
Yep.
Bill, you can't do that. That's copyright.
I am actually going to be writing a blog post about how Apple's move to ARM is going to affect Linux.
I think there's going to be a couple things. I'm looking forward to that. Make sure you let us know.
Oh, I will. And trust me, it will affect us, and it will affect us more than you probably think it will in the long run. In the short term, it'll be very, very little. But in the long run,
I think like two things pop into my head right away. One is when you think of Apple, to me, I think of the harmony between hardware and software in a way that most manufacturers can't achieve because they control the entire ecosystem, right? And if you look at the experience of ARM in Windows, it's been pretty poor because they're using just standard equipment, right? They're using off-the-shelf just chips, right? And Apple's never done that. Even with Intel chips, they tend to optimize everything for battery life, for performance, and people will say, well, you're getting a lesser spec'd machine when you get an Apple device, except that if you've ever used an Apple device, you know that how finely tuned it is for battery life, for performance, for all of those things. And so to me, they're going to make this a great experience. The trickle-down effect of that will be, however they do that, I think we'll all learn from that, or all the manufacturers are going to learn from, okay, how does a company like Apple that has to have, reasonably good performing hardware make this switch into ARM in a way that seemingly other companies have yet to been able to do, at least in a way that is as good, if not better, than an Intel. So to me, that's what I'm really excited about looking at is how do they do it, and where do they end up in terms of their performance and stuff like that? Because I actually had an old G4 Mac before they switched to the Intel, and by the end of the G series chips, they were not, they had kind of lost a lot of the power compared to Intel and those Motorola chips. So I'm definitely curious to see where they go from there.
So I think the other side of it is that Apple used to talk about things like the price, the performance per watt. Back when Steve Jobs ran the company, that's when they made the transition from the PowerPC over to Intel to begin with. Was they were not able to ever get to the performance levels per watt that they wanted to achieve on the PowerPC. And now Intel is in that same spot where they're not able to achieve the performance per watt that any of the companies are looking for. And ARM and also RISC-V do. So I think that's really those machines back there, one of the ones that I just got today is a 20 teraflop machine at 15 watts. You can't do that on Intel. You just can't do that kind of performance on Intel.
I thought AMD was actually getting really close or even achieving that of what ARM was able to do power per watt?
They're doing better, but it is, as far as I'm aware, next to impossible for them to get to that point, because if you have two chips, one ARM based, one AMD based, and they have the same manufacturing process and the same core count, the same clock speed, same cache, basically all things equal. It's just one's ARM, one is AMD. The ARM one's going to have better efficiency because since it is a RISC instruction set, it will be able to do more per clock than what something based on x86 or AMD 64 can ever achieve. The only problem with that is, you have all this great efficiency, but if you can't actually deliver on the performance, then you're limited in what you can do. Up until recently, it's been mostly embedded products, phones, tablets, smartwatches, and only now are we starting to see laptops like the Surface Pro X and the Pinebook Pro, and servers even.
You're missing the point that ARM is not one thing. Like
Right.
there are many ARM like designs, and that you can get an ARM device that's perfectly fine for, a smart spoon, and then there are ARM devices that can scale up really well to laptops, desktops, etc.
Right. And so ARM, you will find that any ARM processor is more than likely customized in some way. If you were to compile code on a Rock chip processor, it will not run on a Snapdragon processor if you don't compile for generic ARM CPU architecture. And that's because of what they are designed for. Rock chip is more for tablets and things like that, whereas Snapdragon is meant for cell phones.
I think we're missing the boat all across. I think so. Apple, I think, learned a lot with the iPad Pro, and they've got developers on board. They have a closed ecosystem. The last piece they were missing was controlling the processor again. And now, if they are controlling making their own chips, they can keep that ecosystem. They can lock it down. They can make it as efficient as they have. My iPad Pro runs things very well in a closed, slab that is, and you can run Photoshop. Now they're still working on it, but they are going to take that because that's the way they want to do things. And I think how this impacts Linux is, a lot of guys like to take old MacBooks, or they like to take old things. We're not getting into that architecture, guys. It's nobody's going to be dual booting anything else unless they choose. If they want to keep developers, what if they chose to do a boot camp style with Linux, made that an option, or something like that? But it's all in their hands. And I think that's where they like it. That's how they want it. They want it, their walled garden, and their users love it. I
think anyone who's run like boot camp, even supported things like Windows and boot camp on a Mac for any duration of time, has realized what a compromised experience it is.
Might as well run parallels.
Apple is very interested in keeping an experience. It's not necessarily about, we're locking you down and not giving you a choice. They're not malicious like that. They're just saying, this is how we can control and make a good experience out of the product. And if they don't have to support a potential of someone putting Linux or Windows and in their eyes, screwing it up, then they'll do that, right? And I don't blame them at all. We don't get mad, when our refrigerator won't, I can't turn my refrigerator into a heater. Like, yeah, of course, because it's a fridge, right? It's meant to be a fridge.
Actually, you can do that.
It's why people go there, though. Their main customer, they want that, right? I think like my wife loves Apple. I mean, she's a photographer. She does her photography on there. It has everything she needs. She gets a new one. She pushes a button. Everything's exactly the way it was on the old one. So we get a new phone. We push a button. It's exactly the way on the old one. The iPad, same. I think that's their customer base. And
so
yeah, I think they want to
Yeah.
control it, and that's good.
I've always been skeptical of this notion that a tablet could replace a laptop, and I still contend that even with an iPad Pro, that there is a limit to how far you're going to go. But for most people, for most things, I think that if power was ever the question, that's not the issue anymore. Now it's the UI and the OS, and even there they've made. I mean, I was extremely skeptical, and Adam had told me 5 months ago, just as an experiment, I'm going to try my iPad Pro and see how it goes. And he did hit some of those barriers where it was kind of like, it's great and it's powerful, and it's actually silly how powerful I can do like video editing and all this crazy stuff, which shows you how powerful those are. And I want to steer this real quick because I know people kind of are like, Apple enough already. So we talk about Apple. One of the things that we talk about, obviously, is controlling the hardware and controlling the software, convergence, ecosystem, all of these terms, right? I still think that, well, not still, but I think that Pine is in a position to potentially pull off something similar. Now, the software side, I think it's going to take a lot of work to get there. But if you look, what do they have now? They've got a Pinebook Pro, they've got the phone, they've got a watch, and they've got a tablet, right? Now, they're all lower spec systems, right? Granted, but that doesn't mean they can't move forward into higher spec system. And if we look at all those devices together and the potential of having that convergent experience, I actually think that's a potential there that is very interesting and compelling now. So,
yeah. Big Pod, did you have you had your hand up?
Well, in my opinion, there won't be much of effect from Apple bringing ARM, or as they call it, Apple Silicon, to their systems. That is because in many cases it won't even be, first of all, won't be able to run Linux, because even if you would be able to install using Boot Camp, kernel wouldn't be there. Kernel for that silicon would have to be special made by Apple. So that's another thing. And ARM itself has a few problems. It has a power potential, but the problem is, unlike CISC architectures like x86, if the architecture doesn't have a specific instruction, and you need that specific instruction, you're gonna have to code around it, and that is basically what x86 and CISC instructions basically work with. Basically, you have just small arrangement of instructions that then basically with which you can do everything. Unlike in ARM, where you have a couple of instructions, but if you don't have a specific instruction, then you're quite problem, and you can use a lot more cycles and a lot more problems. For example, that is why on the new iPad Pro, the Premiere Pro is so great. That is because Premiere Pro and Photoshop are so great because the silicon they use, the ARM chip or whatever mixture of architectures they use, actually has a specific instruction set inside that allows that fast encoding and fast work with video editing and photo editing. If there wasn't that inside, it would be really, really, really slow, because then those who would be implementing that would have to code everything by hand. And that if there isn't an instruction, it takes a lot of time and it uses a lot more cycles. So that is its drawback.
Thanks, Big Pod. Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely. Dave Jones, you had your hand up also. What do you have to add?
I can't help but think that Apple has forgotten the mistakes that they made in the past. And back when
Apple doesn't make, come on, Dave, Apple doesn't make mistakes. Just ask them. No.
Yeah, I know they're not going to say that. But back when, their computers are based on the Motorola chip and the PowerPC, there was a time, I think I remember, when those were considered superior chips, but they were not processors that the majority of the people had. So the majority of software was not made for those processors. And the biggest, and I remember the days when Apple almost went bankrupt. And the biggest complaint, everybody said, oh, Apple computers, they're better than Windows. They're much better. The quality's better. The way they work is better, but you did not have the software. And that almost doomed them. And then they had to go and they changed. So they went with Intel chips and they slowly pulled their boots up and got themselves back to where they are now. And I just think that I can't help but think that they're going to be maybe making the same mistake. And because granted, they said that they made deals with all the major software like Adobe and things like that. But a lot of times, when you have a new software that's being developed and you're trying to get it out, you want it to get to the most hands as possible. And they're going to, people are going to be, and Linux is in the same problem with Apple. Most people are going to make the software first for Windows because that's where the majority of the people are. And I just think that Apple is actually has a good chance of bringing themselves down more. And I don't want to say it this way because it sounds bad, but down more towards the level of Linux. So they're going to be more on an equal footing.
I disagree with that because of a few reasons. One, the move to Apple Silicon on the Macs enables them to run any iPhone and iPad app automatically on the Mac. And iPad apps can be adapted for that. So there's an entire huge app store of apps that people already use on their portable devices that they can now use on their Macs. Also, they have a nice technology called Rosetta, in this case Rosetta 2, and they did show that working, and it's an emulation layer kind of thing that translates Intel code into Apple Silicon code, and that works wonderfully from what they've shown. And so everything that's already working on the Mac OS will move over. New things will get compiled for Apple Silicon to work better, and everything that runs on iOS and iPad OS will also move over.
There's no way
there's going to be any lack of software.
No. There's no way they made this decision lightly at all, right? I mean, and I think, right, if you look at Apple right now, there are some diehard people, creative professionals, some, let's just say normal users who use Macs. But by and large, the iOS is, that is their bread and butter. That's their mainstay. That's what people use. And I think they're trying to we talked about convergence again. I swear it's the last time I'll say it, but right now they've been able to do some of the things on Mac, but people really expect that iOS experience in a lot of ways. I look at an iPad and I think it's not as good of an experience to me because I like a keyboard and a mouse, but I recognize that I'm in my 40s and I grew up in a completely different era than a lot of the people today who want these products. I don't think I would enjoy a touchscreen laptop, but when I hear people talk about them, it's transformative for a lot of them because they can just touch the screen. I want that thing. I'm going to touch it. That's the mentality they have. Why do I have to reach for a mouse? Why do I have to touch a keyboard? And so we've seen them not put touchscreens on Macs, but you better believe, I'm certainly believing that as soon as they've got ARM-based architecture and iOS apps running natively, you're going to see that. So,
Jacob, you go next, please.
Yeah, so I wanted to take this a little bit of a different direction, and this is probably a little ignorant on my part, but I think this is going to change Linux for software availability. Apple's not the first to go ARM. It was actually on a major vendor, Microsoft was the first one, right, with their Surface, their ARM-based Surface. This is the direction Microsoft wants to go too. So if Microsoft is investing in, hey, let's get it on Apple Silicon, let's get it on our own base stuff. The iPad apps for Office are actually pretty compelling. They're not perfect, right? But they're pretty compelling in letting you get done what you need to get done. So if they've already got it built for 2 ARM architectures and they've had to rebase the whole thing, I'll bet you there's some guys sitting in Redmond who are hobbyists with Raspberry Pis and sitting there and saying, hey, I wonder if I can get this on the Pi 4. And then, once that's open, once it's on their Pi, this could open up in a lot of different ways because it forces the industry to have to rebase the software as opposed to selling the same x86 core portions of Photoshop that they've just been recycling and patching onto. They're having to rebase. And so if they go through that process of rebasing and they realize, hey, we're kind of good at this, right? Let's rebase for the Apple stuff because it's a big player in the market space. Microsoft's going that way. Let's rebase for them. As long as we've got friends that are hobbyists that run Linux on the side, they'll probably try to rebase on some of the stuff we run. Somebody mentioned the Pine book earlier, in that space. This could be really good in the long run for making software available more generally across bigger spaces, at least the bigger, the bigger applications that we think of. Now, some of the smaller niche guys are going to run out of steam after they develop it for a couple of the platforms and they won't get to Linux. But I think in the larger players are going to look at us and say, well, why not? We're so close. They're going to be closer now than they were before, potentially. So those are my thoughts. And I'd love to hear, what somebody else thinks. I could be totally wrong. I don't program. So
I'm not sure they're closer now. They'll be closer than they are now. Right now, they're using a relatively standard Intel part that we all run. Every Linux computer distribution on the planet can run on an Intel. Desktop Linux will run on an Intel part. I don't know how going to a custom ARM chip is going to make that better for the Raspberry Pis. I guarantee you, it's going to be more work compiling it between the two ARM chips than it is between the two identical Intel processors.
Yep.
True, but they have to do
you can't run a Raspberry Pi application, ARM compiled application on a different ARM processor. You can't. It's different between the Snapdragon and whatever the Pi's running, and Intel, and now Apple's going to be their own. I'm not sure. I mean, if with that logic, Adobe Photoshop should have been on Linux 10 years ago. And I don't see it happening. I'm sorry, I just don't. Apple's there for their users, their experience, their walled ecosystem, and that's fine. It works. A lot of people like it. Let people run it. It's great, but I don't see that helping. It's not an off the shelf part. I don't see it helping.
Leo, do you see it helping us?
Helping us? Maybe. I think it might, because you've got this idea that Pinebook is kind of doing the whole same kind of idea, right? Just running everything on ARM. I think that's going to be a huge help. But to be honest, I think as far as Apple goes, this was just the next step. This was always going to happen. This was absolutely 100% what they were gunning for from the beginning when they dove into the whole walled garden thing with iPhone. Now that we have all these apps and they have this new silicon and you can run all these apps that you had on your phone on that same silicon, I think this is just going to be a huge boon to the Mac market. I don't know how much that's going to help us, but for people like my wife, I mean, this is absolutely amazing. This is, you really start to consider whether or not it's worth the extra $500 to buy, the same laptop you could get for cheaper. But the fact that she can not have to care about Photoshop or Illustrator or anything like that, and then turn around and buy a $10 app called Procreate and do everything that she was doing in the $100 app Illustrator, it's huge. It's huge for that. So as far as Mac goes, within the Mac ecosystem, it's going to bring more people in. I really do think it's going to bring more people in. This will not hurt them at all. But for Linux, I don't know. I really can't see it making a huge impact on what we do every day. I mean, because I don't know a lot about the architecture itself, but from what it sounds like, ARM Snapdragon and ARM whatever are totally separate beasts, and they might as well be PowerPC, So, I mean, if that's the case, then yeah, it's not going to help us at all. But if it's not the case, if it's kind of more like what Jacob was saying, and that, ARM is ARM and, just a little bit of a change of instruction set, you make that tweak and compile it, why wouldn't you target that? Why wouldn't you just compile that and make it available? But again, I don't know about this, so I'm just kind of, pie in the sky at this point as far as Linux goes.
Right. DJ, go ahead.
So I was just going to point out that this is not Apple's first foray into the ARM space. I don't know if some of you old timers remember, but there was a company called Acorn And Acorn and Apple collaborated back in the 90s to create a processor for the Apple II called Mobius. And that work went on and evolved into what became the Newton. They never took it further, but I see really two things that Apple could possibly do here. One, they could go to a number of machines that would scale up into the more powerful professional machines using Cavium, for example. They could also go to the lower end devices and use more edge-based cloud type computing, which is what's been the trend for about the last 5 years in the industry. A lot of the big software houses have been pushing for that to move off of the desktop. So we Linux users, we don't think that way because we're not, I'm an old guy. I'm a dinosaur, but I'm used to using my applications on my machine. But that's not the way it works in the phone world. That is not the way it works. Most of those applications are cloud-based.
Do you see it being a good, or do you see it helping us or not affecting us?
I just think that it's a trend that Apple is going to follow. I mean, I think Microsoft is doing the same thing with their machines. I mean, they've been doing it for what, 3 or 4 years now with ARM-based machines. You're seeing more of them popping up. Lenovo has an ARM-based machine. Dell is looking at an ARM-based machine, and this is not. And there's a whole different space that's going off on the RISC-V. They're moving out of the SBCs. Yes, you cannot program the same. An ARM 7 is not the same as an ARM 8. But Linux has had that kind of code in it for years. I mean, it supports PowerPC. That's not the same thing as an Intel machine. It has code in it for ARM. It has code in it for RISC. That's not new. So I don't know. I think the trend is that it's going to allow them more flexibility to push into the faster machines. I think it's going to allow them the ability to push down into the lower machines and give people applications on the cloud. I think if I was them, that's what I would be looking at.
Well, look at where they're starting with the Mac Mini kind of being their foray, right? Here, let's start with this simple device that has many uses. A lot of people use it. You look at the tweaks they're making to OS 11, which now at least hold it side by side to your iPad Pro. And I don't know if it looks much different. They've been heading this way for a long time. I don't think anybody was caught off guard or surprised, but I'm not sure how much it's going to affect Linux. I think it's going to affect their user base. I just don't see it.
All right, we are running out of time. Big Pod, real quick, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to comment on the Jacob's point about being easier for Linux applications to come to Linux. Well, there is one ingredient missing that Apple has and we don't. That's Apple's Metal API. It's basically DirectX for Apple devices, and well, we don't have it, and most Apple applications, most Mac applications target that for graphics. So basically, it won't change anything. They'll just retarget the architecture, but that won't mean they will just easily port it to Linux.
All right, Thomas, I know this is not synonymous with your name, but real quick, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to abbreviate this as much as I possibly can.
Okay, thanks.
I think overall, this isn't going to affect their user base. It's not going to grow. It's not going to shrink for a whole host of reasons. But I think it will enable them to have some pretty cool features that we actually kind of already have in Linux. For those of you who don't know, you can actually run an app on another machine by streaming it through SSH in X. It's complicated. I won't get into it, but you can do that. You can run a graphical app on your computer remotely. They will be able to do this much more easily now that they don't have to deal with different CPU architectures. And they could even literally copy an app from an iPhone or an iPad, plop it down on a MacBook, and just go. Because they're similar operating systems, there's the same CPU architecture. So you can basically just copy paste and a user can just go. So I think it's going to add some really cool functionality that I want to see. If we don't already have it in Linux, I want to see it coming to Linux.
All right. We are out of time. Thank you guys for the awesome conversation. But we have to move on. But before we move on, just so you know, next week is Ubuntu Unity Remix for our Distro Talk. So if you guys want to download it and check it out and join us on that conversation, that would be greatly appreciated. So everybody gets the last word. Dan?
Thanks, Rocco, as always. It's fantastic to have you here this week. I know it's been a rough one for you, so it's great to have you. Really missed you last week. Excellent discussion on both Ubuntu Cinnamon and everything else that we've had this evening. So really great being here. So that's it.
Thank you again for helping out last week, Dan. Appreciate it. All right, Joe, last word.
Good to see you, bud. Glad you're vertical. I know even today wasn't a good day, but you soldiered through. Glad you're here with us. Linux User Space, go check it out. I'm going to put our little shameful plug since 4 of us are here. It was appropriate. And just glad to see everybody. Everybody stay safe. Don't believe the headlines, or do believe the headlines, whichever one tells you to stay safe.
All right, Dave Jones.
Thanks, Rocco, for having us all here. Glad to see you back in vertical, as Joe said. We really missed you last week. And I want to thank Josh for the hard work that he did with Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix. It's a great distro. Can't wait to... I look forward to seeing all the great things that he does with it. And I look forward to trying out Unity again.
Aris, last word.
Good to have you back, Rocco. Thank you for the stream. I think with Apple moving to ARM, I think this in no way helps Linux, and it actually could hurt Linux because so many developers buy MacBooks to specifically develop on Macs, and Linux is just afterthought. So I think this will hurt Linux overall.
All right, Josh, last word.
Thanks again for hosting the show. I'll try to see if I can get Rudra Valley, the lead developer, or whatever you want to call him, because the lead developers in terms of Ubuntu Unity Remix have been kind of a little crazy in the past, but yeah. Otherwise, so thanks for watching the show. Thanks everyone for reviewing UCR. If you have any problems, concerns, questions, you can just send me a message on Telegram. I'm in the BDLL Telegram, so you can always message me there. And yeah, I'll see you next week.
Dan Kelly, last word.
Rocco, it's good to see you're back here again. Hope you take care of yourself and stuff like that. And Josh, great take on the cinnamon. It looks really good. It looks like it's pretty usable right now. It just needs, some tweaks here and there, and you guys know what to do with it. Great show, wobbly windows and all, and until next week.
All right, Tony.
Yes, it's installed.
We knew it.
It's good to see you back this week, Rocco. Hope things continue to improve for you. Very impressed with the Ubuntu Cinnamon remix, so well done to Josh for that. Wobbly windows, a step up in conversation from tiling window managers for definite. I was struggling a little bit to keep awake tonight during the show, and that seemed to do it for me, so not so bad. So take care all till next week, and hope to see you all then.
Thanks, Tony. Nate, last word.
Hey, thanks again for having me. It's fun having you back, although I did kind of miss the psychedelic display we had last week. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, okay.
So maybe you could get an effect plug-in for OBS to make it do that yours, and every once in a while I can turn that on and have.
I'll send it over to him.
Yeah. Okay.
Some like rave music or something, and turn some light switches on and off. Maybe the open sign or whatnot.
Maybe we can get a Raspberry Pi to do that, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yet
That'd be
another
great.
use for Raspberry Pi.
But thank you again.
All right, Thomas, last word.
Well, Rocco, I'm glad that you're feeling better, and I hope you continue to feel better. Thanks for letting me back on the stream this week. Ubuntu Cinnamon, great distro, but I am super excited to finally go back to my old love, Unity. But orange you glad it isn't Arch.
Can you?
Oh my, really? Jinda, last word.
I'm glad you're feeling better, Rocco. Thanks for having me on, guys. And that is an awesome distro. I really like the Cinnamon. It's fantastic. Thanks, guys.
Colin, last word.
Yep. Yeah, enjoyed the look around Cinnamon remix. And thank you to Rock and Co as well. And good to see Rocco feeling a lot better. Sorry to disturb you in the hospital last week. I think when I sent you a little message there. And you didn't hold up to your promise. You didn't really give me much of a hard time today, so that was good. Looking forward to trying Unity this week. And yeah, it's been a long time since I've tried Unity. There is a couple of Unity remixes around the Linux arena. So interesting to see what this one will be like. So everyone have a great week and see you next week.
Big Pod, last word.
Well, let's do an ad. Check me out on YouTube. Big Pod. I don't have much to say.
All right, Larry Johnson, last word.
Thank you, Rocco. Great show. Joshua, you did really good work here. Keep it up, and everybody be safe. Thank you.
Leo?
Yeah, Linux user space. There's a thing. Do that thing. But I will say that this whole time I've been slightly distracted because I've been installing and updating Linux Mint 20 and getting everything ready to go for my show tomorrow. So yeah, it's been pretty good. So I'm not using Ubuntu Cinnamon, but I'm real close. I'm close to you in spirit, Josh.
All right, Daniel Bort.
Rocco, good to see you back. Missed you last week. Eric, it's good to see you. Conversation's always great. Josh, you're doing a heck of a job. Sorry I didn't get a chance to try it much this week, but we got a long weekend coming up, so I have a feeling I'm going to be playing catch up. But great conversation, wobbly windows and all, and looking forward to next week.
Adam.
Hey, thanks for the show. Good chat as always. Everybody be safe, be cool, do your thing.
Paul?
Yeah, were you gone, Rocco?
Wow. Well, thanks, Paul. All right, Bill, last word. Bill, are you there? Bill, calling Bill.
Yo, Bill. He said he was MIA AFK
Oh,
something.
okay.
Yeah.
DJ, go ahead. Last word.
Good to see you back, Rocco, and good to see you back too, Eric. Josh, good work. But for next week, can we talk about Nico the cat?
Jacob, last word.
Having one of those weeks where it felt really good to feel like I was a part of the community for a little bit tonight. So thank you for the hundreds of hours you spent creating this, Rocco. I don't join a whole lot because of the time zone, right? Or the time of this thing, but I needed it today. So really appreciate it. Glad to hear you're back up and running.
Jason, last word.
Again, thank you to everybody that that makes this happen. Rocco, Dan, Joe, and all of you guys in the community that joined to make it a fun time. It's good to see you back up and running again, Rocco, and it's good to see you again, Eric. I haven't seen you in a long, long time. It's good to have you back. I did not get to try out the Cinnamon remix there, Josh, but I'll take a look at it and play around. I do love orange, so good job with the orange. I can tell my chair orange.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's just great to, like Jacob was saying, it's just great to have a place to, to get together after, like, I worked 11 hours today and got off work, came in a little bit late, and then had a blast.
All right, Dolphin, last word.
Josh, great job on your Cinnamon remix, and welcome to the club. And happy anniversary to Mrs. Oracle and me, I guess, since she married me.
Yeah.
Yes.
This week, 23 years, and
Nice.
hoping for a whole mess of more.
Awesome.
Congratulations, Dolphin.
Thank you.
Eric, last word, brother.
Congratulations, Dolphin. Thanks, Rocco, for having me back. For me getting a chance to come back, I'm glad to see all the same familiar faces and see everybody's doing well. And with that, I think I will just go ahead and wobble my way out.
Eric, it's good to see you, brother. It's really good to have you back. All right, that is going to wrap it up for us. I would like to thank Josh again for his work on Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix. And I would also like to thank all of you for being here, because it is such a wonderful experience to be able to be with you guys and talk about one of my favorite subjects. So I really appreciate that. Check out Linux User Space. That is July 13th, going to be released, and we will hopefully be, good to listen to. We'll just leave it at that. Linux Spotlight this past week was Monica Ahens Madden, and you should go check that out. That was an awesome discussion, so down to earth, and such a wonderful person. You definitely go need to check that out. Linux Spotlight has gone to a 2-week release cycle now, just because of the time that I have and the amount of work that goes into one of those productions. So July 8th, I'll be releasing an episode where I sit down with Eric, the IT guy, who just also started a new podcast called Sudo.show. And you can check out what it's about and what he thinks about his Linux history and everything in the Linux world. That will wrap it up for us. We will see you guys next week. But until then, long live Linux.
Bye, everyone.
See yous.
Take
care.
Oh, what is happening?
Wobble wobble's glitching.